I have handled projects related to payments and customer onboarding. So these two are the like caption. I mean like kind of like bigger projects which I handled in my tenure. In my data analyst and Power BI developer journey, I used to handle end-to-end data activities like extracting data and cleaning the data and loading the data into Power BI and building visuals by modeling the data into like a most optimized way and finally building visuals as per the BRD documentation. I used to have a skill set of Python, SQL, and Power BI. So Python, it's like very minor part for data cleaning activities. But my I can say like Power BI and SQL, I used side by side to build visuals and to validate visuals, the numbers are correct or not.
Okay. Let's start with the technical question. I saw in your resume that you mentioned that you have worked on the transaction banking data and fraud detection.
Yes.
Okay, so can you explain one use case end to end?
Okay, this is not my standalone project. It's a group project. In this project, we wish to having
Sorry to interrupt you like that. So, since we are here for your interview, so what my suggestion would be, you will tell only about your
my
role.
contribution. Yeah.
Only your contribution, what was your role, what you were doing. I don't need to know about what your team was doing. Only your contribution.
Okay, coming to my contribution, we used to receive sample data, which is a small set of data from a real world large data set. So out of this data, when we analyze in Python, we used to do the EDA to find the outliers in this data. If we see any big jump in transaction volume or transaction quantity, we will highlight the transaction and we will see the customer behavior, like how he is active, like how he is acting in other scenarios. So we will take outliers in the bunch of in a set of data set, and we will observe those transactions with more thoroughly. This this is coming from data analysis from Python itself, but when we loading this data into dashboard, we cannot see like sudden jumps in spikes of transaction volume. So before loading this data into dashboard Power BI itself, we used to I used to do the profiling of data and see what is the outliers in this transaction, and then I'll report this data, report this particular transactions to my senior management, whether we have to go ahead with this transaction data or we have to check with data governance anything inappropriate with this transaction. So before loading into dashboard itself, I used to do EDA and decide whether to go ahead or not with that batch data.
Okay, so even before you load that data into the Power BI, firstly
Yes,
you used to validate the data via Python. That
via
how many?
Python and profiling via Power
Hmm.
BI, Power Query also.
Okay, so you were looking for the anomaly.
Yeah.
Okay, and is there kind and what kind of data issues did you face?
Transactional data, here I have handled the two transaction data sets. One is onboarding data, another one is transactions data. So in onboarding there is a large data set because it is to gather all the customer information before we sign up a new customer. So there is I like there are so many uppercase lowercase scenarios, and there are null values, and there are empty values where we have not mentioned those fields are star important fields. So that bunch of data where customer used to fill, and here we have received a data image files as well for KYC verification. So like all this data set will come into picture, and coming to transactions. So transactions, here we have a fixed data set, from account to account, transaction amount, transaction comments or description. So here we have different data set, and it's easy to handle payments transaction data instead of onboarding data. So I have faced this kind of challenges while working with the data set in onboarding.
Okay, okay. So since you mentioned that you were using Windows function, so can you explain me a real scenario where you used the window function in your project?
Mm, coming to window function, first of all, basically, I use row number as a default identification to list customers who onboard on a particular date, a particular business date, And when we are drawing insights about the payments to see the like what is the highest payment volume, like not payment volume, payment value. Here some transactions are falling with the same amount, same value amount. So in that case I used dense rank function to not to miss the tailing number. Instead of, even though two transaction amounts are sharing the same rank, I used dense rank to give particular rank to each transaction instead of missing
Mhm.
uh, some duplicate ranks.
Okay, so now coming to your point, what is the difference between rank and the row number?
Yeah, rank row number irrespective of the score or score or value, it will give one row number to each row in the data set in the table. But coming to rank, it will compare the column values. So we have to define which column we are taking ahead for rank. So if any two values are lying same in that column, so rank will skip the next coming rank, and like it's like a one, two, two. If two rank is shared by two rows, then rank will skip the third rank and will go to fourth rank.
Okay,
So row number and rank, this is the difference, like identifying rows particularly without duplicating values, and ranking those scorecards or payment values.
okay. So now I'm giving a scenario that you
Okay,
have a transaction data. So you don't need to write the query. You can just tell me theoretically,
okay,
verbally. So you
okay,
have transaction data
okay,
and you need to identify top three customers per region.
okay.
So how would you approach it?
Is it all the data lying in a single table?
Yes.
Okay, if the data is lying in single table, first I will group aggregate those transactions based on their customer ID, and then I use the sum x sum x to I use the sum aggregator to find the overall aggregated sum value for each customer ID. And before this, like I have two approach here. Like if the data set is small, like without using a window function, I can group by customer ID, take the sum of aggregated value, and then rank them descending and take the limit by 3. Here I will get the top 3. And second one, using a window function, here I will do the dense rank, and I will take where rank equal to 1, 2, and 3. Order by
Okay.
descending and take the top 3, rank 1, 2, 3.
Okay. And in case if your query, your SQL query is too slow,
Okay.
so what exact steps would you take to optimize it?
I'll first see the execution plan, how the steps are, like which particular query is taking more time to load. Based on the execution plan, if any optimization required, I'll go ahead and optimize the code. Like one of the example is type conversion. Type conversion on a large data set, like in an entire column, it will take more time. So I will avoid type conversions. It will improve the performance, or it will optimize the query in the end.
Okay. So now coming to the Power BI.
Okay.
So let's suppose you created a dashboard for KPIs like TPV and success rate.
Okay. Yeah.
How did you design your data model?
So I have picked the star schema model, where I'll keep the fact table with the transaction values in the center, and I'll surrounded the transaction table with the customer data and bank branch, where the transaction is happening, or mode of the transaction, whether it is online or offline or some check transaction. So I'll surround a fact quantitative data is surrounded by dimensional qualitative data. It will define where, when, what. So star schema I'll prefer while modeling a data. Even though it's not realistic to get a star schema in every scenario, I will try to minimize the joins between tables, and I'll align the data to like lying around a single fact table.
Okay, since you mentioned that you will prefer the star schema,
Yeah.
then what's the difference between star schema and Snowflake schema? And why do you still prefer star over Snowflake?
The Snowflake schema is nothing but a star schema with more normalization. Here the divisions will have subdivisions, and here the tables are more, and the more number of joins are required, which will keep a heavy load on Power BI, like while doing calculations. Like it should go from like table one to division, and again to subdivision. So like path is longer with more joins. So I should avoid this to like increase the performance of like calculations. So I'll prefer star schema, even though it's not realistic to get star schema in every scenario. I'll try to minimize the joins between tables.
Okay, now I'm giving you a scenario. Let's suppose you created a measure for the total transaction.
Okay.
So total transaction is calculating all the transactions which happened irrespective of from which customer, which region, which product. It is giving you the total transaction of the entire table.
Okay.
Giving you a hypothetical situation, it is 1 lakh. It is
Can
working
you
fine. Hello, I'm so
sorry,
sorry.
Mayank, like
No issues, no issues. Okay. Thank you for pointing it out. So you created a sum measure,
okay.
irrespective, nothing, no filter is applied or no filter is
Okay.
used inside the tax.
Okay.
Simple. Some transaction, that's it.
Okay.
Uh, so it is giving you the total of the all the customer, their products, irrespective of their region.
Okay.
I'm giving you a hypothetical number. It is 1 lakh.
Okay.
Currently, that tax is working fine.
Okay.
Now what happened? You just now you created a slicer
Yeah.
and you clicked for a region and you clicked on north,
Okay.
and that number changed from 1 lakh to 20,000.
Okay.
Why did that happen? Because we now what I'm trying to ask you, we created sum for all transaction,
Yeah.
but after applying slicer, that number changed.
Okay.
So why?
So here I assume data transaction data in one table and region in another table, and both are having a relation, like active relation. When slicer comes into picture, I assume there is like while writing DAX, they have used a all selected filter. So what are the visual filters? It should respect the visual filters. So as it is interactive and the customer is selecting a slicer with region value, and our DAX should accept the visual filters via all selected.
Okay, now what I should do so that whatever the slicer or the visual filter, any filter is used, that amount of 1 lakh is never changed. I have kept it on a card and that I want to be constant. How I can achieve that?
Here I have to use all keyword like from all family. Earlier I have mentioned about all selected, which will respect the visual all filters. In this scenario, the value keep it static with irrespective of interaction. I have to use the all filter.
Okay. And coming to the time intelligence functions.
Okay.
So let's suppose you built a time-based reports.
Okay.
How do you calculate MTD or YTD?
Okay. Month to
Firstly,
date.
can you tell me that what is MTD and YTD? How does it
Uh,
function?
uh, Coming to time intelligence, whether it is a transaction value or like sales value, MTD means month to date. Whatever the date we are lying, it will take the starting of the month and it will calculate all the transactions or sales happened in this period. And coming to YTD, it is like year to date. So whatever the date we are standing, like March 26, it will start from January 1st in the current year. And it will calculate all the sum of transactions or sum of the sales.
Okay. So, and what would happen if the date table is not
Okay.
proper?
If the date table is not proper, like missing of some dates in between the range, so our
Hmm.
visuals will will not behave as we expected. There will be some dropouts of transactions, like the transaction which is looking for a date, the date is not found, and the transaction value might not shown in the report or dashboard. So there will be inconsistency of data. When we are running this same calculation to check via SQL query, our numbers will be differed. So in SQL, it will show like a 1 lakh value, but in Power
Hmm.
BI, it might show a different value, which is lesser or like higher.
Okay. And since you mentioned hypothesis testing in your resume, can
Yeah.
you explain one real business hypothesis you tested?
Yeah, this is in customer onboarding. Like
Hmm.
in assumption, we are having a number like out of the 100 customers who are showing up on the sign up page on page one. Here we have like 5 to 8 pages for sign up based on the options they are selecting. So we have a like value in our head. So the customer who are showing up in the first page, taking a total of 100 customers showing up, we have a assumption the customers at least 75 to 80% will show up in the last page and will complete the onboarding. But there is a friction point in between the pages and there is a drop in this number. So in this way, we have figured out one more issue in our onboarding scenario.
And I'm giving you a scenario. Let's suppose your payment success rate dropped suddenly.
Okay.
So how will you investigate?
Payment drop rate suddenly dropped. Payment
Hmm.
success suddenly dropped. So as we are having historical data for the respective mode of payment, whether it is
Hmm.
online, whether it is mobile, whether it is UPA, or whether it is offline, mostly offline payments won't show much failure rate. We are assuming it is happening in online only. We will compare it
Hmm.
with the historical data to we will check rolling period of transaction data. So what is happening in the last 1 month or like last 1 week. So like we'll having like a certain range, whether if there is very like we are having standards like okay, the range of payment success rate should vary between 85 to 87, suppose, like let's assume if the number is like going below than 85, then we have to use these methods to analyze like which particular mode is failing first of all, and then we have to check whether like a network or like whatever the API supporting those payments are functionally active, or like whether there is any loss of network or loss of service in between. So by comparing the historical data with the current data based on the window of period, we will come into conclusion what happened to the transaction success rate.
Okay. And you mentioned in your resume that you improved dashboard performance by 40%.
Yes.
So may I know what exactly did you change?
Yeah, I have taken two steps here to find the bottlenecks. One is DAX Studio. In the DAX Studio, like what are the measures which I'm using to get the KPIs? So some of the DAX measures found out to be like taking more time to load, and I have used performance analyzer in Power BI desktop application to run which visual is exactly taking the time. And if any DAX involved in the visual, I'll use the DAX Studio. So with the help of these two tools, Power BI Analyzer and DAX Studio, I have found out what are the like bottleneck scenarios in my like report pages. So I have reported these issues, and I have given steps to arrest these issues up to some extent by improving the DAX and look picking the like it might come from modeling as well. Like if I found like some visual it is calculating value with more joins, so at that particular scenario also I like go and fix either in modeling or like whether in DAX, whether in performance analyzer. So these are the steps for me to find out whatever the visual is causing the issue.
Okay, and since you mentioned that you have used the DAX
Mayank,
Studio,
its voice
sorry,
is low.
sorry, since you mentioned that you have used the DAX Studio,
Yeah.
uh, so can you tell me that what is the optimal number which you look for that this is fine for me when it is coming for particular tax? So
Okay.
that number is optimal for you.
Okay. So, whatever the DAX we are having, it should run in milliseconds only. So,
Okay.
based on the length of DAX, based on the calculation, based on the columns and tables involved in the DAX, we used to have a set of standard values. If the DAX is falling above or not above, basically like 5 to 10% range of below only it will come. Like we never achieved a scenario where our DAX is outperforming our standards. So we're having a set of standards to define whether the particular calculation involving multiple columns, multiple tables. So based on time milliseconds, we'll come into conclusion that DAX is causing issue or not.
Okay. So some last set of questions. And what I want this to be in the rapid fire mode.
Okay,
So for every question, you need to give me only one liner answer. Not more than
okay,
that. No explanation required, only one liner.
okay.
Okay, so first one is difference between count and count rows.
Uh, Count, it's a measure on an entire column. Count rows, it will measure distinct columns, distinct rows, I assume. Like rows I used mostly. Sorry, like I'm taking more than one line.
Mhm. Difference between sum and sum x.
So some will work on entire column. Some X will aggregate on row to row, and finally iterate over row to row, and finally some entire iterated values, aggregated values.
What is query folding?
Query folding is a technique sending our Power Query steps back to the source to reduce the heavy lifting in the source itself.
Okay. So in which circumstance the query folding would break?
Query folding will break with if there is no proper connection between source and BI desktop. This is like a optimal scenario. Like we should keep on having eye on like network and the connection between source and destination.
Okay. So that's it from my side, Venkat. I'll give the feedback to the recruiter and they will contact you.
Mayank,
Yeah.
this interview went on a very fast mode. I don't know like how I sounded. Is there any like personal note for me to like any areas of week I have to focus on?
Mm,
Where